So I don't know about you guys, but have you ever noticed that when you check to pay the minimum balance on your credit card, that the credit card companies just make you feel like it's something that's okay to be paying? Well, it's not okay to be paying, and that's why I'm making this video, because I want to go over all the cons about paying the minimum balance on your credit card, because honestly, there's a few big ones, 3 specifically, that I want to cover, because it's not a good idea to be paying the minimum balance unless you absolutely have no other choice. Now, before I get into everything, I do want to preface that if you have no other choice with your credit card company but to pay the minimum payment, then definitely do that, because you are not going to have any late fees and it's not going to be reported on your credit as a late payment. So definitely make sure that you are at least making that minimum payment if you're in a pickle, because then you're not going to have any real consequences other than interest and a couple other problems that I'm going to be talking about in this video. And if you just happen to find this channel, I'm Jason with Honest Finance, and I make a lot of videos on different topics that'll give your life and your finances more value. So if you do have an interest in this particular type of content, feel free to subscribe or just give this video a big thumbs up. But now let's start talking about the 3 big cons with making your minimum payments on your credit cards. So the first big problem with paying the minimum balance on your credit cards is the obvious fact that you are going to be accruing interest because you're making the minimum payment. Because basically how it works is you're going to have a statement balance that's due every single month. And if you don't make that statement balance paid off in full by the due date, then you are going to accrue interest. So obviously paying the minimum payment, this is the smallest amount possible. It's never going to be the amount that you need to pay off that statement balance. So you are going to be accruing interest, but that's usually just a given. And when I say that it's just a given, what I'm referring to is the fact that most of us understand that you are going to be paying interest when you're making those minimum payments, but I don't think a lot of us understand how the interest is actually accruing. Now, I'm not going to go into this in huge depth here, but it is called ADB, which means it's average daily balance, and that's the method that the credit cards are using, and I'll just briefly explain how that works here. Okay, so the easiest way that I can explain how the average daily balance method works is just think of your billing cycle as an entire average here. So if you've got 30 days in your cycle and you started your balance off with $0 and then you ended up at $1,200, then what the credit card company is going to do is they're going to take your balance every single day during that entire cycle, and then they're going to take an average, and then they're going to be able to apply their interest rate onto that average, and that is how they charge you the interest. It's just as simple as that. It's just an average of the entire cycle, but that's the way that it works. Now, if you do happen to be paying interest on your credit cards, there is something that you can do to save a little bit of money on interest, and that's just the fact that if you are going to be making big purchases, do those towards the end of the cycle, because then your average is going to be lower. Because if you were going to buy a $2,000 fridge at the beginning of the cycle, that's going to bump up your average throughout the entire cycle. So buy that at the end, and that will save you money on interest. And then another thing you can do is if you have money to pay off your card, pay that off as often as you can during the cycle to get your average down a little bit lower. Because the more you can put towards the credit card, the lower that average is going to be, and that's going to save you on interest. So do that as far as those tips go if you are paying interest. Obviously, it's a lot better to pay no interest, but there are some of us out there that are paying interest. So if you are, use those tips and you can save some money. Now, the next problem with making the stupid minimum payments on your credit cards is just the fact that a lot of the credit card companies are only going to be making you pay at least 1% of your balance plus the interest, and that's it. So a lot of the time it's really easy to be making that minimum payment, but the problem is that you're never going to get out of owing them money. Because for instance, if you had a $1,300 balance, you might only owe like 20 to 30 bucks as a minimum payment, but it's going to take you over 10 years just to pay that off, and you're going to be wasting all that money in interest. So they make you feel like it's super easy to make that minimum payment, but it's something you really don't ever want to be doing. So if you have been making minimum payments, just be aware that it's going to take you forever to pay off your credit card balance if you're making that minimum payment. Plus, the other problem is you're probably still making charges on your credit card. So stop making charges and pay anything more than you can towards the minimum. So for instance, if you owe 50 bucks as a minimum, just try paying 75, something better than what the minimum is, so that you can start to climb out of the hole that you're in. Now, the third problem with paying your minimum balance or just not paying off the statement balance in full is the fact that you are going to lose your grace period. Now, what the grace period is it's just the gap between when your cycle ends and when the due date happens. So usually it's like 25 days after the cycle ends, and that's when your due date. That's the grace period. You don't actually have to pay any interest on purchases that you make during the grace period if you're not accruing interest, meaning you're paying off your statement balance every month. But if you're paying your minimum balance, obviously you are losing your grace period. So just keep that in mind. You are paying interest on everything. Now, obviously, when I'm talking about the grace period, the due date, the billing cycle, all that kind of stuff, it is a little bit complicated when it comes to credit cards and understanding how they work. So I will leave a playlist up here that you guys can watch. These have some more in-depth videos on those specific topics. So if you guys want to learn more about the grace period or how credit card interest works and stuff like that, those videos will explain that. But I'm just trying to briefly explain why you don't want to be paying your minimum balance. But if you need some more help, those videos are here for you guys. Now, in order to stop paying interest on your credit cards, basically the only way that you're going to be able to do that is to pay off that statement balance in full by the due date. Now, once you do that, a lot of credit card companies actually require you to do that 2 times in a row. So for 2 months in a row, you're going to have to pay off that statement balance in full in order to get your grace period back and to not pay interest on any purchases. That is the only way that you're not going to be paying interest on your credit card, is to once again pay off that statement balance in full by the due date, and then you are good to go and you don't have to worry about a thing. Now, obviously, every credit card issuer has different rules, so you are going to want to check the fine print on how to exactly get out of paying interest. But generally, what I've found is that you got to pay the 2 months in a row of your statement balance. Now, your statement balance, for instance, if it's $1,000, you have to pay that full $1,000 off by the due date. You can't just pay $999 by the due date. Otherwise, that $1 that you owe is going to cause the entire ripple effect of paying interest on your grace period and your past purchases. So just don't open up that can. Pay off that statement balance completely in full, and that's all you have to worry about. So at the end of the day, if the credit card company makes you feel like it's okay to be making those minimum payments, just understand that it is something you don't want to be doing unless you absolutely have to, because you are going to be paying interest on it. You're never going to get out if you make those minimum payments, and you're losing your grace period. So don't pay interest unless you absolutely have to. Now, once again, if you just found this channel, I'm Jason with Honest Finance, and I make a lot of videos on different topics that'll give your life and your finances more value. So if you did get some value out of this video, feel free to subscribe. But for now, I am going to leave a few more credit card videos that you guys can watch over here. But thank you for your time. Have a great day.